a sense of community when you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me.
Hi, everyone. Well, today's guest is one of these multi-talented people. She is a novelist, an actor, an activist, nature girl, self-appointed poet laureate of Facebook. She is a freelance novelist at Dundurn Press and Smart House Books. Now, Smart House Books is her own company. And on top of all of that, she's a badass. Ladies and gentlemen, Heidi von Palleske, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
For sure. I loved all of those things that you said. I didn't include mom, but she's also mom, people, just so you know.
That goes with badass.
All right. I hope they appreciate you for your badassiness.
They do. I'm a bit of a role model. My daughter and all of her friends have kind of learned to stand up for themselves and follow their own morality. So they appreciate my badassedness.
Very good. So now let's just talk about your work. There's so much to talk about. I don't know where to start. So what did you do first? Like, was it the poetry, the acting?
Well, that's a tough one. Because poetry's always been part of my life, and but this, it's not exactly something you can say I'm going to do this as my full-time job, right? There's no money in poetry, and by the time I was in third grade, I was writing, directing, and acting in my own plays every week at school. So I was doing that, and then in high school I did a lot of plays, and I went into theater school. But I've always loved poetry. I've always been a poet, and I've always written. It's just that I spent the first part of my career focusing on the acting.
Okay. Now, just let's focus on the poetry just for a bit, because you're published, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you've been published in quite a few different areas, different places.
Yeah, I've been published in anthologies. I have a thin book of poetry published. I have 2 novels published. So, yeah.
Okay. What are the name of your novels? Your novels?
My novels. They don't run red trains anymore, which I did through my company, Smart House Books, and we published that along with another 9 books. And the other one is called Two White Queens and the One-Eyed Jack. Mm-hmm. It's the first book of the Glasseye trilogy, and that came out in 2021.
Okay. So what was the first one you said?
They Don't Run Red Trains Anymore.
What's that one about?
Well, it really started organically, that book. I sadly had a friend who committed suicide by jumping in front of a subway train.
Oh my goodness.
And it was horrific. And you compartmentalize grief in a sense. And I remember standing at the subway and thinking, how could you possibly? And so I just started writing my thoughts about it. And then my thoughts became paragraphs, and then I reworked it and became a short story, and then it became a novel. Mm-hmm. And so the muse for that one was really a very, very sad place. And but the positive part of it was that I was also obsessed with sculpture at the time. And so I brought in my love of fine art. So it's a story about a woman who sculpts, and she's going through OCAD. And she meets this woman that she wants to have pose for her, and the woman is, she's depressed. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's their friendship. It's, and it's sort of coming to terms as an artist, like discovering yourself as an artist, and so it's really the arc of. I mean, I should have called it Portrait of the Artist as a Young Woman.
Now, you were the winner of an H.R. Percy Award.
Right, and that's out of the Maritimes. Mm-hmm. And the award is for Best Novel Manuscript for all of Eastern Canada.
Oh, so, yeah. Nice. Very mm-hmm. nice.
Yeah.
All right. You've been published, let's see, Beggars Press Publications.
Mm-hmm. They did a lot of my poetry, actually.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gosh, there's so many here. I don't even know where to start here. Women's Health Journal. That was for your Deadly Fairy Dust.
Yes, so and the Globe and Mail as well. I wrote a piece about the asbestos industry and how it affected me as a child because my father worked in an asbestos factory, and I called it fairy dust because I start with me as a 4-year-old
Mm.
being brought in during a Christmas party that the company was giving, and we were allowed to see where our fathers worked. And I imagine that the asbestos, which is quite deadly,
Yeah.
I imagine that they were fairies floating in the air. So that's where that piece came from. Yeah,
Right.
and both of my parents died because of asbestos. So that piece really started my activism to try to change policies around asbestos.
Right. Yeah. I've heard that now, while we don't use it here, we still manufacture it and sell it to third world countries.
No, that stopped. In fact, so when my mother was dying, I promised her that I would fight the asbestos industry, even though it was a bit of a David and Goliath story,
Mm-hmm.
and that I wouldn't stop until we closed the mines and until we stopped the exportation.
Oh,
And so the exportation stopped in like 2012 or 2013,
good.
but we still had a lot of asbestos in our built environment. We also still had asbestos in car brakes, and we imported some things that had asbestos in it. So it took until I think 2018 before we did a complete ban on asbestos. But it's still, it is in our built environment still. So
Yes.
people still have to be very careful when they renovate and be very aware of the asbestos that is, existing in our buildings.
Yeah, I know because I had my husband and I bought a house and it was built in the 1930s. And when we had somebody come in to do the renovating, they wouldn't touch the attic because they didn't know if there was asbestos under there. And we'd have to get a specialist, he said, which I understood,
Yeah.
I'm really glad because somebody just told me that was still being exported. So I'm really glad to find out that it's not being produced and it's not going anywhere. I'm really pleased about that. And
it's an interesting story, but when my mom got sick, it seemed very unfair to me because
yeah.
she got sick because she cleaned my dad's clothes. She didn't work with asbestos, right? So it was secondhand asbestos. So there was a fear amongst the 5 children that we would go the same way.
Mm.
And so instead of just mourning my mother as she got sick and died, and it was only a 4-month process from the time that she was diagnosed.
Right.
There was always the concern of what if I have it? I have a young child, so it sort of took away from the grieving process. And then I jumped right into the activism immediately. I was so angry. And so the day that they said that they weren't going to export asbestos anymore, I thought I would pop the champagne because it was a very, very hard battle. And I had 7 other women who were all fighting the battle with me. They're extraordinary. And, I'd be in a foxhole with any of those women. They were the bravest women I've ever met in my life.
Wonderful.
But I didn't feel like popping the champagne bottle. I didn't feel like, celebrating in any way whatsoever because I had taken the grief over my mom's dying and my dad's and put it on a shelf so that I could fight the battle. When the battle was finished, instead of celebration, I had an emptiness in my heart where the anger was, and the grief just poured right in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I grieved my mother, 2 years after her death, really, because I was fighting this battle, right?
Mm.
So
yeah. It's interesting, isn't it, how you can put those feelings aside for a time. Like my husband, he died of cancer, but during his illness, it was 6 months after he passed before I finally just broke down.
Because you have so many things to do, right? Society doesn't allow you to grieve the way you want because you have to do the paperwork, you have to file those taxes, you have so many things you have to do as the person who loved that person the most. And then it's when all those things are finished that suddenly you're grieving, and it's after the fact, and it creeps up on you. It happens, when you least expect it.
And you don't know what to do with it almost, right?
You don't know what to do with it. It's like, it makes you just stop.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But then you pick up because this is life, right?
That's right. Well, yeah.
Let's get into something more positive.
Positive, yes.
So tell me about some of your acting.
Oh, yes. So, so a lot of people ask me, what are you now? Are you a writer? You're an actor? And I don't, I don't really see a huge difference. I see myself as a storyteller. Sometimes I tell someone else's story. Sometimes I tell my own, right? So my career really, really made the big leap when I did Dead Ringers all those years ago. And when I did that film, suddenly I wasn't doing day players and small roles anymore. I was getting leads,
Right.
and so that was a gift, and I got to work with David Cronenberg, of course, who you don't get better than that in terms of directors, and Jeremy Irons, who's a formidable actor.
Right.
Recently, I have two films coming out, both leads. One called Bordello, and I play Ada, who's an Irish woman who gave up all of her dreams and ended up in a bordello, and so she's really feisty and a real survivor, and she breaks free and makes her way elsewhere. And so that was great to play a role that was that strong and sexy at this part of my life. And then the last movie I did this year was called My Animal, and we haven't done any of the post-production voiceover stuff on it yet, but I think they're hoping to have it ready in time for Sundance, if not TIFF next year. And it's a werewolf movie with a twist. So I am the mother of werewolves.
Ah.
And yeah, and it was maybe the hardest role I've ever played in my life. I think about 40 scenes, and maybe there was 3 scenes where I wasn't either raging or crying or having a fit or fighting. It was all big stuff.
Right.
And so I finished that and felt, pretty exhausted, really. And it was cold. It was Timmins, right? So, so we were shooting a lot outside, and it was 38 below. It was really cold.
Right.
I didn't realize that. I mean, yes, I've experienced cold, but day in and day out. And my very last shot was me in a white t-shirt, 38 below,
Oh.
lying there with they wanted the white so they could see the blood. So yeah, so it was cold. They
Sometimes.
give you a backpack, right? They give you a heat backpack. You go there, you got a heat backpack, you're fine. So you're melting the snow with the small of the back, and the rest of you is frostbitten, really. So your body doesn't know, am I too hot here or am I too cold everywhere else?
The things you're willing to do for the craft.
It's true, right? It's crazy the things that you're willing to do.
Yeah.
So
I forgot
I
to
love acting. I love acting, and I think people do all these tests to see if they're an introvert or an extrovert, and depending on my mood, I go back and forth. So I think I'm an ambivert, that I'm extroverted sometimes and I'm incredibly shy and introverted other times.
Yeah.
So I think that splitting my life as a writer and as an actor, I get to experience both, right? I get to be center stage, and I'd be the center of attention, and then I get to hide away and isolate myself, and both of those things are wonderful in their own ways.
It's interesting you said that, because I always consider myself an introverted extrovert.
An ambivert. There, you got the new word.
I never heard the term ambivert before, but I got to try to remember that one, because I do this, but socially I have such an awkward time. It's very difficult for me, unless
exactly.
Yeah.
So do you feel that, like, if you have to stand up in front of people and give a speech, you're okay, but walk into a crowded party by yourself and have to jump into someone else's conversation, like, I could die.
And people don't understand it, right? You're an actress, so how come you can't do it?
Yeah, what's wrong with you? I don't even like picking up I was so happy when we started to text, because if I had a complaint with my cell phone or something, much nicer just to to text than to be on the phone and wait and then explain to someone. I don't want to talk to a stranger. I just send a little text, right? So God. That's the introverted part of me.
Yes, we're so similar. Recently I was at a Toastmaster reunion, and a lot of people got up and did speeches, like the mayor was there, just regular stuff. And then somebody who was whoever was hosting, I can't remember, said, would anybody else like to get up and speak? And a lot of people turned to me. just because I have this show. And, you know, and
Right.
I've done stage stuff, you know, but people kind of expect it, right?
That's right.
It's kind of strange the way that is. I don't know.
Mhm.
But anyway, it doesn't matter. Now I'm getting on about myself again.
No, but it's the same. It's so similar.
Yeah.
I'm so glad to meet you. Kindred spirit, another ambivert.
Deeper. Oh my God, that is so good. I'm gonna really, I have to remember. I'll have to write it down because like my brain doesn't, you know.
I gotta, you know, I'm going to text it to you afterwards, right?
Okay. Yes, and it's the same thing. You know, sometimes when I invite people on the show, they'll say, "Well, can we talk on the phone first?" And I'm in my head, I'm going, "Why?" You know, right? So, but what I now suggest is, can we do Messenger, FaceTime on Messenger instead? Then I'm okay.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep, I get it.
So that's working out.
Yep.
But I'm thinking, you're going to be on the show. What do I have to talk to Ed ahead of time for?
Yeah, and then we're gonna, you know, like let's have a little spontaneity, right? Like,
yeah.
right.
God, that's too funny. No, anyway, I'm just want to. Okay, here we go. Get back to some of the things.
Work.
Interested. Well, not, you know, yeah.
Yeah.
Your likes, cold water swimming.
Yeah, I love it.
Do you?
I do.
When
It's crazy.
When did you get into that?
Well, I grew up on the shores of Lake Ontario, right? So my summers were, I mean, as soon as school was out, I never had shoes on. I was barefooted and I was down at that lake all the time. And I would swim, you know, as early as May. I would go in when no one else would. And well, my sister did too. And we'd come out, our skin would be almost blue, right? It was, you know, so I grew up with that. And then, you know, then I've lived here, there, and everywhere. And for a little while, I moved back to the shores of Lake Ontario and, you know, went right back to it. And one time, the last day I had a swim was the day they were putting up the Christmas decorations. And yeah, so they all looked at me like I was insane. You know? I mean, I don't do the polar dip thing with everybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and Lake Ontario is a very, very, very cold lake. You know, it doesn't really warm up till the end of August. And I mean, I was living in Vancouver for a very short time, and then I came out. I think I was swimming in November or something, and someone said, "Oh my God, you must be brave. It's got to be cold." And I said two words: Lake Ontario, because you know, because it's colder than, you know, the Atlantic's cold. The Atlantic's really cold, you know, body of water.
And when you first come up, when you first come up to BC in the wintertime, you're walking around with your jacket wide open where everybody's
right.
Up, right?
Yeah, it's like, wow, it's spring all the time here. You know, it's completely different. So yeah, so I you know, I love it, and I feel when I'm swimming in cold water, all of my worries and troubles go away. It's just all that exists is the water and me and the swimming. And I'm not a good swimmer. I'm not like this great crazy swimmer who, you know, does the crawl and has her head underwater and all of that. I do the breaststroke and I float on my back, and you know, that's about it. But I can be in the water for a very long time. And yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Now you like reading scripts with friends.
Yeah, well, I have a group of friends who read scripts. Well, we mostly read my scripts. So, and in fact, one of my friends said, it's so much fun, you know, because it ends up being like a party. We read and we read for each other. And so one of my friends said, I think that was the best time I've had in a long time. I think you need to write us another script. So very often I'll write something with them all in mind, right? And I swear, if a bomb ever went off, it's like they're the best actors in Toronto, maybe in Canada, in that room, and we just keeps our chops up. I get to hear my work read out loud, which is great. I mean, even when I write a novel, I read it out loud as I go along, because it's like the rhythm of things, and maybe that's part of it as a poet. The rhythm is very important to me, and I like to make sure that there's, especially in the dialogue, that it all sounds really authentic. So I read everything out loud as I go along, and so it's really nice to have, you know, this group of friends who read my stuff, and we joke, and it's fantastic. One of them after we read it a few times, we put it on stage, we invited in an audience, and that was fantastic.
Very nice. Yeah.
So yeah.
I understand about the reading out loud. Like when I was with Toastmasters, we'd have to write speeches, right? And I always read mine out loud as both the flow, as just like you said, it's about the rhythm and the flow.
Exactly.
Right? For somebody to want to listen, it has to flow.
Hmm. And I got to read, Two White Queens and One Jack became an audiobook. So I got to read that on,
Nice.
a really hot summer's day in a cramped little studio. So it was sweaty and smelly, but it was great to read that out loud. And at one point I thought, why did I write people with so many different accents? But it was fantastic to have that microphone and to read it the way I heard it when I wrote it, and have and it's always nice, I think, if an author can read, it's always nice to have the author read their own work. Yeah. So I did the audiobook of Two White Queens, and that was great fun. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. It's kind of interesting, that you talk about 1 minute it's the cold, the next minute it's extreme heat,
Yeah.
Right?
It's life in Canada, isn't it? Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Now you collect art and you enjoy visiting art galleries?
I do. And, my daughter was my buddy from the time she was 2, going to art galleries with me. And I think I must have created a bit of a beast, because she'll stand in front of a painting. If you go, okay, come on, there's other people, let's move on. From the time she was very small, she'd say, how long did it take the artist to paint this, Mom? And you're going to move on. So, and we would stand, we would discuss paintings in a really, a deep way. And so she ended up with this appreciation for art as well. I can't draw. My daughter can draw. She's a brilliant artist. I mean, she's really good. Yeah. But I can't. If I drew a stick man, you would look at it and you'd say, what's that? And I would say, it's a stick man. And you'd say, it doesn't look like one. I have no ability. And yet I have so much respect for visual artists. I really do. And I sometimes look at, works of art, and I just think, how can you translate that? It looks so 3-dimensional into 2 dimensions, or a piece of sculpture, like where, the marble looks more alive than flesh, and you think, how is that even possible? So I like the magic of visual art, and I have such a respect for painters and sculptors and fine artists. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. What is Duolingo?
It's a habit. I could have much worse addictions than Duolingo. So Duolingo is it's a free app. I mean, you can also get the super Duolingo, but I'm fine with the free app. It's fantastic, and they have all kinds of different languages. I do 5 days a week. I do German. 2 days a week I do French. The French is to break up the German a bit. And I only do 15-20 minutes a day. And I'm just so slowly. I started doing it during lockdown. I thought little rituals were it's an important way just to get through it. So I picked up my classical guitar again, and I started Duolingo. And so I guess I'm 630 days into it or something, and I should be fluent, but I'm not. But I think I need to start talking to people who speak the language. So I just do a little bit of Duolingo every single day. So my 2 things I do is I don't write a sonnet every single day except a couple of months a year. So I write a sonnet every day in the month of April, because it's poetry month,
right?
And I usually do November because it's my birthday month. And then I put them up, at other times as well. And but I probably write at least 3 or 4 a week, and I do Duolingo. So those things stuck with me after the pandemic as hobbies, but maybe as well as disciplines that I continued.
Now here's another thing we have in common: reading tarot.
Yeah. So yes.
I used to do that. I don't do it anymore. Well, I have occasionally, but my sister, my niece, one time we had a psychic storefront. We called it Deja Vu, and at that time I did palmistry or psychometry more than tarot reading.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, I just sort of hold my hand up. Okay, what's going on here?
I was more fascinated with psychometry though than anything, because every object you touch has. Like anybody who touches something, they leave behind a part of their energy. Right. And I used to give workshops, psychometry workshops. So that was really fun. That was my favorite.
It'd be interesting if you wanted to gather up your energy again, if you would go back to everything that you've touched or every place where you've lived.
Yeah.
to try to see what it was exactly that you left behind, or what was that thing that you gave, right? Or any place that you visited, to go back, to have a period in your life where you go, where you sort of like, you just revisit everything and you go, what did I leave here? Did I leave it entirely here and keep a bit for myself, or did I leave it all here and I need to reclaim it? You know, that would be. I wonder if we can get an arts council grant for that. And
I don't know.
We'll do a road trip. We'll Thelma and Louise it, and
except we're not going to drive off. So.
No. We'll end before that bit. Yeah,
just before. We'll put on the brakes. So getting to the end of the show, and I just want to ask now if anybody wants to get a hold of you. I think you have a website, do you?
I do. It's Heidi von Palleske.com. So it's just my name.com.
Nice.
And you can find me there. Nice and easy. Yeah.
For sure.
And I have both my acting and my writing things on there. And I have a blog that I should keep up a bit more than I do. But any news of shows coming up, or readings, or things being published, will all be on the website as well.
Very good. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed it.
Great. Yes, I hope I meet you in real life, and
that would be great. Yeah,
I'll be a bit shy because I'm introverted when I meet people.
So we'll stand together, looking at each other. Really,
we'll look at each other, and then I'll read your cards, and you can read, all of my things, and then we'll know so much about each other that there'll be no secrets.
We won't have to talk. Now, just stay on camera for a second. I just want to talk to the audience there. I've been speaking with Heidi von Palleske. And I will include her website. So if you want to look up and purchase any of her works, or find out where she's going to be performing or whatever she's doing, there's so much of it, you'll be able to do that. So in the meantime, everybody, be nice. It's free, and take care, and peace out.
A sense of community, till it wax a place to be. A sense of community where you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me. It's multicultural, you're sure to see it all. Chilliwack's the place to be, you'll see. Come party in the park, go dancing after dark. Chilliwack's a place to be, you'll see.